My parents let my sister drop out while forcing me to work 2 jobs for college. Now they're broke. And I'm the only one they can't manipulate anymore. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I've spent my entire life being compared to my sister. Hannah the golden child who could do no wrong. If she sneezed, my parents would act like she'd invented oxygen. If I got an A, they'd ask why it wasn't an A+. Growing up in that kind of house changes you. You start measuring your worth in silence because no matter what you do, someone else already won before you even began. I still remember my 10th birthday. I'd asked for a secondhand bicycle. My dad said, "We can't afford extras right now." A week later, Hannah got a brand new tablet because she said her old one was too slow. When I pointed it out, my mom snapped, "Don't be jealous. Be grateful you're mature enough to understand." That line, "be mature," was their favorite excuse. It meant accept unfairness and smile while you do it. Hannah had everything handed to her: new clothes, private tutors, her own room filled with pastel furniture and fairy lights. My room looked like a storage closet. She got birthday parties with guests and balloons. I got a dinner with leftovers, and we're tight this month, even as a kid. I started internalizing the idea that love was conditional, and mine came with a price tag. But the worst part wasn't the favoritism itself, it was how natural it felt to them. They didn't think they were doing anything wrong. If I ever confronted them, my mom would sigh and say, "We just want to make sure Hannah feels supported. She's sensitive, unlike you." That sentence carved something sharp into me, a reminder that even my pain wasn't valid. Still, I told myself things would change when we grew up. Maybe adulthood would even the scales. But deep down I already knew Hannah would always shine. I'd always be the shadow standing behind her. Responsibility was my inheritance long before I ever earned a paycheck. When I turned 16, my dad tossed me the car keys not to celebrate freedom, but to say, "You'll need this to get to your shift." I was already working weekends at a grocery store, while Hannah spent hers at sleepovers and study retreats that somehow involved beach photos. Whenever I asked why she didn't have to work, my mom would say, "She's not built for stress like you." "You're tougher," sounded like a compliment. It wasn't until it was permission for them to take advantage of me. Every day after school, I'd race to the store, change into my uniform in the bathroom, and clock in before 5 p.m. I still smell that mix of mop water and stale bread when I think of high school. The nights were long, but I told myself it was temporary. "Just get into college," I'd whisper while bagging groceries. "They'll finally see your worth." One night, Hannah came home crying because she failed a math quiz. My parents rushed to comfort her. Dad even promised a new phone to boost her spirits. When I mentioned I'd been promoted to shift lead, Mom barely looked up from consoling Hannah. "That's nice, dear," she said, her tone flat. The message was clear. My effort wasn't a story worth celebrating. I became the silent adult in a family of emotional children. I paid for things before anyone asked, stayed out of trouble, and became the person everyone could depend on, but no one thanked. Sometimes I'd hear my parents tell relatives, "We're so lucky to have a responsible son." But behind closed doors, I wasn't treated like luck. I was treated like insurance, someone they could lean on without ever acknowledging the weight I carried. Still, I believed someday the balance would shift. Someday they'd appreciate me. I had no idea how wrong I was. College was supposed to be my ticket out, a clean slate where I could finally breathe without Hannah's shadow trailing me. But instead, it became the clearest reminder of where I stood in my family's hierarchy. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, acceptance letter in hand, my chest buzzing with pride. "I got in," I said, expecting at least one genuine smile. My dad barely looked up from his phone. "That's great," he muttered, "but we'll need to figure out finances." 2 days later, I overheard them discussing how they'd help Hannah find her path. They were already paying for her career exploration courses and some online program about interior design. When I brought up tuition again, my mom sighed and said, "You're the smart one, honey. You'll figure it out. Besides, we're tight right now." That phrase, "we're tight right now," became their all-purpose excuse to drain my hope. So I worked. 2 jobs. Morning shifts at a delivery warehouse, nights at a local cafe. My hands were blistered, my eyes constantly red, but I didn't dare complain. Whenever I called home to vent, my mom's response was always the same. Don't stress. Hard work builds character. Yet, when Hannah flunked out of her program a year later, they threw her a small self-care trip to reset. I watched through social media as my sister smiled in vacation photos while I poured espresso shots on 3 hours of sleep. I kept telling myself it was fine, that my degree would buy me respect. But respect doesn't exist in a house built on favoritism. It only shifts forms. And deep down, I was starting to realize, no matter how hard I worked, I'd always be paying for her comfort. By my second year of college, exhaustion wasn't just physical, it lived inside me. Every morning, I'd wake up in my tiny off-campus apartment, drag myself to class, and then straight to work. My phone buzzed constantly with my parents. Requests, reminders to pay the family internet bill for a month or two. To send a little extra because Hannah's been going through a rough patch, each message felt like a tug, pulling me back into a life I was desperately trying to outgrow. When I called home, I'd hear laughter in the background, family dinners, birthday cakes, inside jokes I was no longer part of. "We miss you," my mom would say, but she never asked how I was holding up. When I told her I'd failed a midterm from working too many shifts, she said, "Maybe you're not managing your time well." Hannah's stressed too, but she doesn't complain. That comparison hit harder than I wanted to admit. It wasn't advice, it was dismissal wrapped in parental concern. Then came the breaking point. I found out through Facebook that Hannah had officially dropped out. No warning, no conversation. My parents didn't scold her, they threw her a dinner at home. "She just needs to find herself," Mom said, as if it were brave to quit while others broke themselves trying. That night, I sat alone in my room staring at my cracked laptop screen. My reflection looked older, hollow, drained. I realized something I'd never wanted to believe. The problem wasn't temporary, and it wasn't about money. It was about hierarchy. I was raised to serve, and she was raised to receive. Still, I kept grinding because if I stopped, they'd say, "See? He's not as strong as we thought." And I refused to give them that satisfaction. It happened one evening during winter break. I was home for the holidays, pretending everything was fine, when my mom asked me to help her sort some old documents. The dining table was covered with envelopes, bank statements, and coffee stains. I was half asleep, flipping through folders, when a familiar word caught my eye. College savings account. My name was on it. So was Hannah's. But the balance wasn't what shocked me. It was the withdrawal history. Every dollar had been emptied. Years ago, at first I thought there had been a mistake. "Mom, what's this?" I asked, my voice trembling. She looked up, startled. "Oh, that. We had to use it. Things got tight." I pressed harder. "Tight for who? You told me there wasn't any savings. You said you couldn't help." My dad stepped in, his tone sharp. "Watch your attitude." We did what we had to do. That's when I noticed the dates. The withdrawals lined up with Hannah's career programs, her laptop purchase, her little getaway trips. My stomach twisted. "So you took my college fund to pay for her vacations?" I said, almost laughing in disbelief. My mom snapped, "Don't twist things. We were trying to keep this family together." I remember sitting there numb. While they guilt-tripped me for making them feel bad, my dad's words burned into me. "You're lucky we even managed to help you get started. Some kids get nothing." I wanted to scream that I was one of those kids, that I'd earned every inch of progress on my own. That night I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and realized something irreversible. They hadn't just taken my savings, they'd stolen my trust. And from that moment, I decided I'd never ask them for help again. After that night, something inside me snapped, but not loudly. It was quiet, like a door closing. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't explain. I just started detaching. When I went back to college, I stopped calling home. I stopped sending money for bills or for Hannah's emergencies. My texts became short, polite replies instead of open conversations. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Graduation came and went without them there. They said they couldn't afford the trip, though I later found out they'd gone to one of Hannah's friends' destination weddings that same month. I didn't even feel anger anymore, just confirmation of what I already knew. I accepted a job offer in another city the next day and never looked back. The years that followed were lonely but peaceful. I poured everything into my work late nights, long weekends, new projects. Every promotion, every raise felt like a middle finger to the narrative they'd built about me being selfish or ungrateful. I built a life on my own terms, my apartment, my car, my rules. I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore. Still, sometimes I'd scroll through Hannah's social media. She was still drifting new jobs, new boyfriends, same smiles. Every post had captions like, "Trust the journey, and the universe provides." Meanwhile, my parents were still funding her journey. I knew it wouldn't last, but I didn't care. For years, I stayed silent. I didn't send gifts. I didn't go home for holidays. I didn't even call when my mom hinted about their financial struggles. I had nothing left to give, not money, not sympathy, not guilt. But deep down, I knew silence has a way of echoing back, and eventually, they were going to need me again. It started with a voicemail. My mom's voice cracked through the speaker, shaky and desperate. "Please call us back. It's serious this time." I hesitated for hours before finally dialing. My dad answered, sounding smaller than I'd ever heard him. "We're in trouble, son. The bank's taking the house. Your mother's been sick, and Hannah's out of work again." For a second, I couldn't speak. The silence felt heavy, like years of history collapsing in one moment. They'd always been untouchable in their arrogance, certain I'd come running. Now the power had flipped, but it didn't feel victorious. It just felt strange. "What do you want me to do?" I finally asked. My dad didn't hesitate. "We need help. You're the only one doing well right now." That line cut through me. You're the only one doing well. It was almost laughable because years ago, I was the one they left to struggle, while Hannah found herself. I asked about her. My mom sniffled. "She's been trying. Poor thing. Life's been unfair to her." I nearly laughed out loud. The irony was painful. They begged me to come home for a family meeting. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Part of me wanted closure, maybe even to see if there was still some humanity left between us. But when I hung up, sat in silence for a long time, staring out my apartment window. I should have felt satisfaction. Karma, right? But instead there was only this cold, detached calm, like standing at the edge of something I'd already seen coming. For years I'd been their backup plan, and now, with nowhere else to turn, that was all they had left. When I finally drove back to my hometown, it didn't feel like home anymore. The streets seemed smaller, the paint on our old house chipped and dull. Even the front yard, once my dad's pride, was overgrown and neglected. I sat in my car for a minute, staring at the place that had shaped me, wondering why I felt nothing. My mom opened the door before I even knocked. She looked older, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes tired. "You came," she said softly, as if surprised. My dad appeared behind her, his once commanding posture now bent. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and burnt coffee. Hannah was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, she muttered, "Wow, the prodigal son returns." No hug, no warmth. Just sarcasm. We sat around the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once discovered the truth. Out the savings account. My dad cleared his throat. "We've fallen behind on the mortgage. Your mother's medical bills." He trailed off, waiting for me to interrupt with an offer. I didn't. I just listened. The silence stretched until my mom finally said, "You're doing so well now. Maybe you could help us get back on our feet?" I looked at Hannah, who avoided eye contact. "You mean bail you out?" I said quietly. My dad bristled. "Don't make it sound ugly. We're family." That word, family, rang hollow. They'd used it like a leash for years. "I'll think about it," I said finally, standing up. My mom's face fell, but I couldn't stay. The air felt heavy, suffocating. As I stepped outside, I realized something chilling. I didn't hate them anymore. I just didn't care. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a cheap motel on the edge of town, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in lazy circles. My phone buzzed with messages from my mom. "We're counting on you. Your dad's so stressed. Don't abandon us." Read them all, feeling nothing. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn their love. Now they wanted my success too. The next morning I drove back to their house, not to comfort them, but to end the illusion. They were already waiting at the table, papers spread out, numbers scribbled across napkins. My dad jumped right in. "If you could just cover a few months of payments, we can stabilize." My mom added quickly, "You're doing well, sweetheart. This wouldn't even hurt you." I took a deep breath. "I'm not giving you money." Silence. My dad's jaw tightened. "Excuse me? I'll pay for a financial advisor. They'll help you restructure your debts. But I'm not handing over cash." My mom's face twisted. "After everything we've done for you," she said, tears already forming. Hannah leaned back, arms crossed. "Wow, you're really enjoying this, huh?" I looked at her. She still had that smug confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences. "No, Hannah," I said quietly. "I'm just done." That was when my dad slammed his hand on the table. "You ungrateful little," he started, but I didn't let him finish. I stood up. "You taught me that love is a transaction. I just stopped paying the price." The silence that followed felt final. I walked to the door, feeling years of guilt fall off my shoulders like dust. Behind me, my mom's voice cracked one last time. "Don't turn your back on family." I didn't even look back when I said, "You turned first." The drive back to the city felt like crossing dimensions, leaving behind a world that no longer had a claim on me. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. I rolled down the window, letting the cold wind sting my face like a reset. My phone kept lighting up. Missed calls, long texts, guilt-soaked paragraphs about family unity and how could you do this to us. I didn't respond. Every message just confirmed that I'd made the right choice. Months passed. The silence stretched, but it didn't hurt like it used to. Instead, it felt clean, peaceful. I poured myself into my work, built new connections, even started dating again, slowly relearning what mutual respect actually looked like. Still, every now and then, a thought crept in. Should I have helped them? But then I'd remember the years of neglect, the lies, manipulation disguised as love, and the doubt would vanish. Word reached me through an aunt. My parents had sold the house. They moved into a smaller rental in another town. Hannah had broken up with her boyfriend again and was trying to figure things out. The same old cycle, just smaller, sadder, more desperate. I felt no joy in hearing it, but I also felt no guilt. Their downfall wasn't my revenge. It was the inevitable cost of their choices. Sometimes, I'd look at old family photos, me, standing a little off to the side, smiling just enough to look included. I realized that kid spent his whole life chasing validation that was never real. Now, I wasn't chasing anything. I was simply living, and that was worth more than any apology they'd never give. Almost a year went by before I heard from any of them again. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. When I answered, I heard her voice, Hannah. Softer than I remembered, almost trembling. "Hey, it's me," she said. I didn't know who else to call. For a moment I said nothing. She went on, voice cracking. "I'm in trouble. My boyfriend kicked me out. I don't have anywhere to stay. Mom and Dad can't help, they're behind on rent. I need a little money. Just enough to get back on my feet." The old Mitha one trained to fix everything almost said yes, but I caught myself. "Hannah," I said quietly, "I can't give you money, but if you're serious about turning things around, I can get you an interview where I work. You'll have to show up, work hard, and start from the bottom."
Ow.
There was a long pause. Then she let out a small, bitter laugh. "You really think I'm going to work some boring office job?" "Forget it." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, the emptiness echoing louder than her voice ever could. That was the irony. After everything, years of being told I was selfish, ungrateful, a cold eye had finally become what they always accused me of being, unreachable. But not out of spite, out of survival. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching city lights flicker below. Somewhere out there, my family was still living in chaos. And for once, I wasn't part of it. It's been 3 years since that call. I never heard from Hannah again, and honestly, I stopped expecting to. My parents send the occasional holiday text generic messages about forgiveness and family unity, but I don't reply. There's nothing left to repair because there's nothing left between us. And that realization, while painful, feels strangely freeing. I've built a life that would have once felt impossible. I have a stable career, a small apartment filled with peace instead of tension, and a few friends who treat me like family in all the ways that matter. I even adopted a dog last year, something small, loyal, and undeserving of the kind of neglect I grew up with. Some nights when the city goes quiet, I sit on my balcony and think about that old house, the chipped paint, the laughter that always left me out, the weight I carried just to earn a seat at their table. I don't hate them anymore. Hate takes energy, and they've already taken enough of that from me. What I feel now is distance, the kind that comes from healing. I learned that love without respect isn't love at all. It's dependency disguised as affection. And once you stop feeding it, it withers. If they ever see me again, they might not recognize the person I've become. Because I'm no longer the son who bends, the brother who begs, or the ghost who stays quiet to keep the peace. I'm the man they built through neglect, the one who learned that peace isn't given. It's claimed, and maybe that's the truest revenge of all. Living a life so full of self-worth that the people who broke, you no longer have the power to touch it.